fascinating. The study of Jesus, what he said, what he did, nothing more fascinating, really. To think that God came in human flesh, which is true, might sound bizarre, might sound kind of crazy, but he did. God came and wrapped himself in skin, and then he walked on this earth to demonstrate so much, especially about God. I love Jesus. I do. I love him. And I'm not loving someone that's dead in history, but I love him because he's alive today. He really is. What's fascinating particularly about this next segment in Matthew is who he chose. Like when you start studying these guys, who he chose to be his main men, his core group, his top leaders of all the followers that was following him. Now, there's a lot of people who are starting to follow Jesus, some with different levels. Some had a real serious, sense of love and devotion for Jesus. Some followed him because of curiosity. If I were to draw kind of like circles here, and I say, well, here's followers. Let's put Jesus right here, JC, right here. And there are some followers way out here on the edges that were like, who is this guy? Wow, I've heard about him. I want to go find out what he is. And they followed him around. I mean, they didn't live day after day with him. Maybe they traveled for 2 or 3 days and went back home, or maybe they did a week or two. They collected food or whatever. I don't know. I'm not sure. But there were a lot of followers of Jesus Christ. And the crowds, we'll call this the crowd. Okay, we'll say crowd. Okay. And then you have, they're following Jesus. And then you have a lot of disciples out here who I will call them, I don't know what to call them. Let's say these guys are followers, but they're not that committed to him. But they're following him. They're trying to learn from him. And the word disciple, one of the main words, especially the initial, first word, is a learner. The first meaning of a disciple is more of a learner. Learning about something and doing something is different, though. So I think we could take this and say a second, meaning of the word disciple, can mean different things, I suppose, is a real follower. Okay, you're not just learning from him, but you're actually following him in his teachings. You're following what he says, or you're following what he does. You start acting like him. And like these apostles that we're talking about, in the last story, remember, he sent away, is the word apostles. And so we had the 12 in here. Okay, by the way, you have a bunch of followers. And then you have, later you're going to find out there's 70 here. I'm going to draw this one and put an arrow in this area. There were 70. Some translations say 72, but hey, close enough. 70 followers here that obviously were a different, deeper level. These guys were really serious. They're more serious, okay, about Jesus. Okay, and so what are you, by the way? Which follower are you? Are you right now just a little learner? You're kind of learning about him? Are you starting to follow him? Maybe 2 and 3 are the same. Or are you starting to get serious? Yeah, that's what I'd like for you to do. And Jesus would too. But this one is really important. They started getting serious. So there's 70 followers. Evidently, they stayed with him a lot. They hung out with him. They had to go do business with their families and all that, but they came looking for him again, especially it's in Galilee. And Galilee was just a third of the size of Israel. If you remember Israel, if you draw a quick map of Israel, you have Galilee here, Samaria here, and Judea. That was a terrible drawing. So we have a big circle here, big circle here, big circle here. This is Galilee, which is about a third. It's 2,000 square miles, by the way. So you've got this land up here. So they were traveling around with them a lot in Galilee. That's where he was, hanging out and teaching in all their synagogues and their places. And then you have the 12 here. Now this is the one that we're talking about, the main group here, and it's this group right here, this one right here, the 12 that were called to be apostles. Okay, they weren't the only apostles. Initially, they were the only apostles, and then later more came. But anyway, let's go into this next one and find out who these guys are. Okay, notice number one, they were men. God chose men. Now, God chooses women, no doubt, to do awesome things. But I think I discussed in the last time that there were 12 men, and that's representing, I think it's an echo of the 12 men, patriarchs, the leader of the tribes of Israel. We already discussed that, but that's one reason why I probably called them as men. Plus, there's other reasons, but we'll get into that as we get into the stories of the Bible. 12 men, what's absolutely fantastic and amazing about these guys, are you ready? Are you ready for this? This is fascinating. Is that they were sort of ordinary, meaning they were like working men, most of them, and ordinary. They weren't like professors or rich. One guy probably was rich. I don't think the others were, but maybe. But they're kind of like ordinary, men, like ordinary guys like me, maybe you or something, just average sort of guys. God can take ordinary and change them into extraordinary. Extraordinary, yeah. He could take an average and make it above average. I'm going to tell you right now, if you give your life to Jesus Christ for real, you get serious with him, a real disciple, he will take your life and make it very meaningful. I'm serious. He'll take your life and make you great, really great. God called human beings to be great. And if you follow his plan and follow his ways, then God will take you right up. He'll make you a great person. I'm not saying you have to be popular. There's a lot of people that never have been popular, but they're popular in heaven. I'll tell you that right now. Heaven and the demon powers knew them. There's prayers and people who really know the word of God and are very obedient to Jesus. They are great in the list of people up in heaven. All right, I go on and on. Let's get back to this. They were sort of ordinary men, I would say. Almost all of them were from Galilee, which is significant, by the way. Why didn't Jesus, if you draw that map again, here's Galilee, here's Samaria, and here's Judea. Why in the world didn't Jesus call for the people from Judea? Those are supposedly the great people. This is where Jerusalem was, if you remember. Jerusalem was the great capital, and he didn't call anyone from Jerusalem. And these are the high officials and the religious leaders, the main ones. This is where the Sanhedrin was, which is the high court, the Supreme Court. He didn't call any judges. He didn't call any high official government officials. He called people just like, if this is a high people, he called these people down here. Do you know? See, God looks at people differently than man does. Did you hear what I said? God chooses people based on their heart and what he can make of them and their willingness to yield and surrender. That's why I say you may feel like, no, not that great a person, or not. You feel like a nobody sometimes. Oh my goodness, you're a candidate. You are a person that Jesus can choose. And if you say, yes, Lord, here am I. What do you want to do with me? That's it right there. Woo! I feel the power of that. You surrendered yourself to Jesus like that and say, here, Lord, I give you my heart. Would you help me to do whatever you want me to do? Child, yes. You have a great future ahead of you. And God will show you what he's going to do. They were men, ordinary, Galilee. Most of them were, I would say they were working men, in my opinion. Some of them were working men, meaning they weren't like employers or bosses, although a couple of them were. Now, we don't know about the others. Matthew might have been also, I can't think of their names right now. James and John. I couldn't think of it just for a second. I was trying to get in an order. James and John, they had servants under them. They had hired men, like employees. All right, so etc. We're going to find out more and more about them. Well, somewhat more and more. The fact is the Bible doesn't say a whole lot about them. But the Bible gives us exactly what we need to see what Jesus did with these kind of average Joe guys, Joe Smith guys, whatever. All right, so I'm going to name these apostles in the order of Matthew put it. In the other Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke brings out the list, okay? And most of them are exactly the same, or at least the after the first name, and then you have three names, and then you have the first name, and you have three names, and you have first name, and you have three names, kind of three. Same name at the top, same name at the top, same name at the top. Not sure if that's really that important, but it's kind of interesting. They happen to have the same name after. So it's groups of four in each, three lists. Interesting. But here we have it. I'll see if I can remember how Matthew did it. One is he said Jesus chose Simon, which is also named Peter. Okay. And his name was changed, or Jesus gave him another name. Let's say it. He pegged him. He said Peter. Okay, so we have Simon Peter. Simon, by the way, means to hear, to hearken to listen to, and hopefully to obey. It's really the guy from the 12 tribes that his name was Simeon. So his name was chosen. Simon was chosen by their parents as Simon. Simon, it seems, is the most popular name in the first century. And by the way, the Bible has several Simons in it. But it seems like Simon was very popular, maybe the number one popular thing. By the way, it's interesting that Matthew actually says first, he's the only one that said this, first Simon Peter. First Simon, who is also named Peter. He says first. I mean, we could kind of guess what that means. First meaning he could be like saying first, Peter was on the top of the list. I'm not sure about that. He's the first name of every one of the lists, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Simon. So it could be that Matthew's saying, first, Simon, which he's kind of the big leader of the group. He seems to be, by the way, biblically. God seemed to make him first among equals, maybe, or something. All right, so there's Simon, Peter, and then you have, and then his brother. Now they all put these brothers together. So Andrew, okay, which means manly or manliness, kind of interesting. Macho, I don't know about that, but I don't know, his name means that. Doesn't mean that he necessarily was. Although a lot of times, especially in Bible days, the name kind of indicates sometimes on who that person is, like what he's like. Okay, so anyway, here's Andrew. He's his brother. By the way, Andrew is the person that brought Peter and Simon to Jesus. There's not a whole lot of stories about him, or most of these other lists, all these other guys. Not a whole lot of things about him. Some very, very little, some nothing. Just that's a guy in the list. But the top ones, you have more information, especially, like I said, Simon Peter. All right, I'm not going to tell the stories either, because that is in the stories coming up. So I'm just going to introduce you. That's what this is. This is an introduction to these guys. That's what Matthew is saying. And then we have the other two guys who, by the way, were fishing partners with Simon and Andrew. These were brothers. And Andrew was the first person, like I said, that actually met Jesus, I believe, and he brought him there. And then this other guy is named James. Okay, there's James. It's a couple James, actually 3 James in this list, which we'll talk about. We have James and then John. I think I'm about to change markers. I have another marker here. I might want to change it, but well, so far it's okay. Johanan. James actually comes from Jacob, which is, the father of all the 12 sons, but this is a kind of, I think, probably the Greek way of saying it, maybe. This is James, which is supplanter or deceiver and all, which, I don't know, it's interesting. James and John. James seems to be the older one, and John seems to be the younger one here. These were fishermen, and these are the guys who has a father named Zebedee, and these guys Zebedee had servants for their boating industry, their boating job, fishing. And so these guys, actually, these two were partners with these guys. All right, so this is James and John. Woo, we know a lot about James and John. Later, I will say this, they were called the Sons of Thunder. We'll find out why later. Sons of Thunder. Wow, interesting. All right, so there's those 4. I think what I'm going to do also is I'm going to erase this, and then just kind of do another list over here. We'll do 6 here and 6 here. So there's Simon, Andrew, James, and John. And then we have a guy named Philip, which means, I'll see my markers going out. Philip, which is an interesting guy. Very cool guy. Not a whole lot of stories about him, a couple. But one of them was he brought Nathanael to Jesus. You'll see that in John chapter 1. Is it 1 or 2? Yeah, 1. Philip actually brought Nathanael to Jesus. So we'll talk about that in a second. But Philip, okay, let me draw this. Philip means lover of horses, or another term which seems to be different meanings, warrior. Philip, interesting guy. Philip, okay. And then we have Bartholomew. Bar means son. Bartholomew. There, Bartholomew. Now, in the other lists, there's, it seems that this guy could have been, actually it's in the other list, Bartholomew, could have been the friend of Bartholomew, who could have been Nathanael that he brought. It's speculation, I'm not sure. Okay, there's those 6. Okay, now let's come up to the top, and we'll say Thomas is another one. By the way, Bartholomew, son of a person who has an abundance of furrows. Furrows means trenches, so I don't get that at all at this point. Maybe I'll find out someday, as I keep studying. It's fun to study, by the way. It's so fun to get all this stuff. Okay, here's Thomas, which is mentioned several times in the Bible. Very cool guy. Trying to think of what his name means. I know them all, but let me go on right now. We have Thomas, and then Matthew. This is where Matthew put his own name in the thing. Matthew means gracious, a gift of God, gracious gift. So that's kind of cool. Now, what's interesting about Matthew when he wrote this, and I don't think it's in the other list. It's not mentioned in the other list. I think I could be wrong. He actually said the publican, or maybe he said the tax collector. So he identified in himself as a tax collector. In my opinion, he wasn't happy. He was kind of embarrassed about it, but he admitted that he used to be the guy who was taking taxes, making money off them. This, in my opinion, he was very rich. Okay. And then he gave up his tax collecting for Jesus. Very cool. Are you willing to give up things for Jesus, child? How about you, teenager? How about you, mom, dad? Are you willing to give up? Listen, Jesus gave up his life for you. Definitely, I'm willing to give up anything and everything. Yeah, really. So Matthew is a great guy. All these are great. And that's why he chose them, because he made them from a average to an above average. He made each one of them great. Jesus Christ made them great. Really cool. All right, Matthew. And then we have James, another James, okay, here. Jacob, James. And then we have Thaddeus. I hope I spell these right. By the way, this guy is also named, if you put all the lists together, it seems like he has the same name as Judas, as well as definitely, oh my goodness, I know it, Ladius, okay, kind of close to this. He had 3 different names or different nicknames and such. So there's Thaddeus, okay, let's see, Philip, James, okay, I'm sorry, going across here, then we have another guy named Simon, so we have another Simon right here. And then Matthew wrote this, and others did too. They named him the Zealot, okay? The Zealot, okay? Right there, okay? So they named him that, probably to be able to distinguish this Simon from this Simon, okay? Oh, also this James is also called the Less, because there's another James, and of course, the less means the younger. Now, it could be the less means he's smaller, stature, kind of a smaller body or something, I don't know. And the one that's on the last one on every list in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and also Acts 1, by the way, names these guys, but he leaves this guy off. He leaves him off because he actually talks about him. This is a sad one. This is not the great guy here. He actually became a traitor to Jesus. And Jesus, when he chose these guys, knew he was going to betray him. He knew he was going to turn him over to the authorities. And, you know, it's really bad. This guy would have been better, Jesus said, if he wouldn't have even been born. He also became the treasurer, the money bag holder of all the money that they needed to be able to buy food and things like that. And he stole. He was a thief in that money bag, taking money out of it. And Jesus knew that. He still let him do it. He knew that he was going to be a bad guy in this bunch. A lot of times there's always a bad apple, you know. But Jesus chose him. He chose all these guys. So his name was Judas. Okay, remember there's another Judas up here. And they named him, or nicknamed, the Iscariot, or Judas of Iscariot. Okay, now a lot of question has been around, what does Iscariot mean? One of the most popular things is that there's another form of the word, karyoth, or something like that, which, by the way, if that's true, different form of the word, in Israel, here's Galilee here, here's Samaria here, and then here's Judea. The bottom of Judea right here, let's say this is Jerusalem right here. In the bottom of Judea, this city is named right here. It's actually mentioned in the Judges, or is it Joshua or Judges? I think it's one of those. Anyway, the city was right here, down here, which is really close to Edom, and this guy was possibly from this area, Judea, and not from Galilee. One out of all the 12 who really wasn't called from Galilee. It seems all these guys were right from here. I should put a question mark. They all were from there. But Matthew wrote this list, and I just want to end in this, talking a lot again. There's so much, isn't it? It's so good. This is what's so incredibly, I dropped my pen, my marker. This is what's so incredibly marvelous, incredible, fascinating about these lists. Well, I already told you a lot about it, but let me show you something. Think about it. This guy were just mere fishermen. They were just fishing. They were fishing. They weren't like religious leaders. They weren't probably schooled. Well, they definitely weren't schooled in the higher theological, like big Bible stuff, you know, like schools, like in Jerusalem. As a matter of fact, later in Acts chapter 4 or 5, the Sanhedrin said they noticed that these guys were unlearned. They didn't learn what the schools were teaching, all the deeper rabbis and all that. They knew Bible because they were brought up by Bible. Jewish people were brought up by Bible, like Christians should be brought up by Bible. Yet, God chose through Jesus Christ these simple fishermen. Amazing. And then Philip and their buddies here. These guys right here, Thomas, you know, we don't know too much about him. Matthew, this is where you get going like, wow, check this out. Fascinating. Matthew was a tax collector of all these other guys, and Jesus chose him. Amazing stuff there. Amazing. Like, he's taking all the taxes from these fishermen, and they probably didn't like him very much. But you know what's really super amazing? This guy, Simon the Zealot. I didn't talk about what a zealot is. A zealot was a nationalist type, special revolutionary type group that wanted to overthrow Rome. It's kind of like a gang, maybe. Kind of like a gang who was wanting to, you know, cause problems like with the Roman government. As a matter of fact, in 70 AD, the main reason that the Roman government came and had war against Jerusalem and against Israel was because of the Zealots. So now they weren't maybe as popular at that time. They got more popular. But they were hot, and they were like very against the Roman government being there. They also were very probably religious and political, like government and Bible stuff. So Simon was a zealot, and that's why Matthew put that in there. What's interesting is Matthew was probably hated in the beginning, possibly by Simon more than any of the others, because he did not like how this guy was working with the Roman government. So these two are in the same bunch together. Don't you love it? Jesus knows how to bring people together. He's a Prince of Peace. He's a peacemaker. And he knows how to change hearts, and they loved each other. They became all of them became friends, really close, really tight, a tight group. And they all served Jesus. And if you focus your life on Jesus, and if everyone did that, our world would be totally radically changed. But I love how he chose each one of these, like these guys. I mean, it's fascinating. There's Simon Zealot with Matthew, and then these guys, a fisherman, just named no fish. We don't know too much about the others and their jobs and all that. And they weren't all that popular, most likely, among the people. Matthew was. So, like, see this set of pins and all, if you notice them? So I've got all these pins. I don't have like figurines of disciples, the apostles. We don't know what they look like. But basically, here's 12. Trust me, I counted 12, except there's one more actually. Do you notice all these guys right here? They're all kind of different, somewhat the same. Some are about, they're Galilean. But do you notice the difference on one of them? Yep, there he is. The one in the red. Jesus Christ. There's 13 of these. So Jesus, and I like it in red. It just happened to be like an eraser in red. I think of the blood of Jesus a lot. But he's the one that started erasing all the stuff out of their lives and started working in these guys and changing them. And then he empowered them, and then he came upon them, and later he poured out his Spirit. Okay, there we go. He's different, isn't he? But he hung with them and became their buddy and their companion and their travel companion. And they hung out together. And they were all, Jesus was centered, I'll put him in the center now, here among all of them. And he just became like a brother to them and a friend. It's an awesome, awesome thought that Jesus was hanging out with these guys. You see it? Very, very cool. So I want to encourage you, child, to give your life to Jesus, to follow him. And God will choose you to do what he wants you to do in life. I love Jesus. He's fascinating. Look what he did. Brought these together. And he used these guys to radically change the world. There you go. That's the next story in Matthew chapter 10. We'll come to the next one coming up here and what he told them. It's the first mission of what he told them to do, these apostles. All right, God bless you.